Now that we know more about reference types and value types, let's dive a bit more into custom types. When talking about types in .NET, we can create different categories of types. We have already seen how to create a custom class, and that is by far the most commonly used custom type. But there are others. In total, there are 5 categories of types. So we have already worked with the class, but we also have the enumerations, the struct, interfaces, and delegates. These different categories fall in one of the 2 large buckets of types we have looked at before, value types and reference types. Enumerations, which I will cover in this module, and structs, also covered in this module, are value types. They will indeed contain their value and are created on the stack. The other 3 categories, classes, interfaces, and delegates, are reference types. When we used integers, bools, string, we were actually using predefined types. Those are types that come with .NET. Indeed, the .NET Class library is itself a huge collection of types. Both predefined value types and predefined reference types are included. Quite a lot of them really, literally thousands. Next to the built-in ones, we can create our own. When we created the employee class, we've created a user-defined type, and since that is a class, that will be a reference data type. In .NET Core, we have the base class library, aka the BCL. The BCL is a large library that we can use when writing C# applications. It contains a huge number of custom types, mostly classes that we can use from our own application code. The BCL offers all kinds of functionality already baked in so that we don't have to write it again. Going from working with files, drawing on the screen, looping over items in a list, connecting to a database, and much, much more. Since there are so many types in .NET, throwing them all in one big bucket would be quite a mess. Probably there would be name collisions too. Multiple types within .NET could share the same name, and by default that is not allowed. That's why types are grouped in namespaces, another heavily used concept when working with C#. It's a way to organize types in groups. You can think of it like a folder with subfolders, and the types live in the folders and subfolders. Because of this organization, we can have multiple types with the same name, as long as they live in a different namespace. Take a look at this hierarchy, since that is really how namespaces are organized. At the top, we have the system namespace. System itself contains types. Then there are other namespaces whose name starts with system, then a dot, and then, for example, web. In that namespace, there will be all kinds of types that have to do with web-related functionality. And the nesting can go deeper, a lot deeper, as you can see, for example, with the system.io namespace. The types in .NET are placed in namespaces, but also our own custom types will place in namespaces. By using namespaces, we avoid naming collisions between different types with the same name. Of course, when using a type that lives in a given namespace, you do need to point out to .NET where it should look for the type. And we can do this by bringing in a using statement for the type's namespace at the top of the file. By using a namespace for one of the namespaces we just saw, system.io, all types within that namespace become available for use in our code, including here the file info type. Since some using statements are so common, since .NET 6, we actually have what is known as global usings. As the name implies, these are using statements which are globally set. So for the entire application, and as such, we don't need to include in our own code the using statements anymore. Upon compilation of our code, Visual Studio will generate a file that contains the code that you see here, containing a list of global using statements. By making these global, it's not required that we add a using statement ourselves in our own code for the types in these namespaces. Adding it won't cause an error though. It is just not needed anymore.